Okay, guys, we're ready to get started. If I'm counting correctly, this is class 4 of 6, isn't it? Sound about right? Because that's what I marked in my notes. Okay, so before we get started, I usually like to come up with some way to hand out my giveaways every month. And this month, I've decided that we're going to have to show Peter a little bit of love for everything that he does for us. So I've got 3 giveaways, and the giveaways are going away to the one who completes this sentence the best. Peter is so short that ... Now I realize that's kind of uncomfortable for everybody because nobody wants to like roast Peter. So to sweeten the pot, the giveaways are the SQL Server 2008 Query Performance Tuning Distilled, the new SQL Server 2008 Internals by Kaylin Delaney and the 2 Trips, and the 70432 Implementation and Maintenance Training Kit for SQL 2008. So, depends on what you love more, the sysinternals or Peter. So, you guys just shout those things, just shout them up there as you think of them, and whoever gets the best one will get their first pick. Okay. And that's kind of a reward for those of y'all. We're down from like 70 to like 30 now, so you know this is a reward for you guys. I'm getting the best stuff now, and I've got some really good giveaways next month too. I'm starting to hold them back a little bit. So okay, what I usually do is I usually start off with some basics and then move into the SQL stuff. I'm certainly planning to move into the SQL stuff, but we got some pretty decent basics to get out of our way. So I hope that we can get through it all, and I hope nothing goes wrong, and so on and so on. So what we're going to talk about now is we're going to start off talking about actual script files, because up until now, all we've been doing is just scripting freehand at the command line, right? Which will only take you so far. You need to be able to schedule these things. You need to be able to take large chunks of code and save them and call scripts and have other scripts call other scripts and so on and so on. PowerShell, or like any scripting language, is only so useful only at the command line, right? I mean, you can only ad hoc so much. So the good news is that script files are written exactly like the command line versions. So unlike VB script, where you can't say cd space my directory and then have another cd and then have another cd and sit there and switch between CDs and have the directory become active, you can do that in PowerShell. So the exact way you move through the structure and at the command line here is the same way that you move through it in the script. It works the exact same way. So you don't have to change it. Once you're here at the command line and you're getting something worked out ad hoc, you can take that exact script, you can take those exact lines, save it to a script, and it'll work the exact same way, just like you were sitting in front of it. And we'll see a little bit of that. What I want to start off with, my first demo is going to be on passing parameters to scripts, because again, very few of my scripts work very well without passing some kind of parameter to them to modularize them and make them really useful, right? So there are 2 ways to pass parameters. The first one is by using arguments. And if we open up this file here, you see here I'm setting a local variable to the args0 and args1, and you can see that that's just a 0-based array, right? So you can pass in the $args, and I'm just setting that locally. Now, you don't have to set those to local variables. You can use those down here in your script. You can use, $arg0 and $arg1 down here, but I really suggest that you don't, because, like I said up here in the notes, and all this code will be posted up on the web, that if you've got a really thick script and you've got 17 or 25 arguments, it's going to be really hard to go in there and say, argument 17, what the hell was that? So you're going to want to translate it into something a little more meaningful, right? With that, if we just call that, and anytime you call, well, okay, I need to back up for a minute. When you first install PowerShell, you can't run scripts, okay? If I come here and say get execution policy, you see here it's set to remote signed. I had to set that myself. Okay, it's by default it's set to restricted, which means that PowerShell out of the box won't even run scripts. Okay? In order to get it to run scripts, you have to run set execution policy and set it to what you want it to, and mine was, and I can set it to it again, right? It's not going to hurt it. But I could set it to restricted, and I could take away my ability to run scripts. There's no reason to, right? So you could do remote signed, or I think, what's the other one? All signed? Something like that. But until you do that, you will get a generic message that says that the file you're trying to run is not a recognized command or batch. And it's not, because PowerShell hasn't been kicked in yet. So you have to set PowerShell up to run first. Now, also, when you run scripts, you have to qualify them with a path. And if you're in the same folder, you can qualify them with a front whack or a back whack. It doesn't really matter. But you have to qualify it with either a full path or a relative path. And that's to what was that? Was that args? And you don't have to give the extension. If it's the only file in there named args, it'll pick it up. But if there are two, then it'll probably pick up the text first. PS1, and let's see, my server and my location. Look at that. My server and my location is what got turned in. So in here again, we took the arguments, we set them to server name and location name, then I just printed those to the screen. Double quotes, you remember, parses out the value of the variable, and life is good, right? So now we have another one here. There's another way to do it with parameters. No. To do that, you just specify param and put the parameters in parentheses, and this is kind of a way to get your variable names right up front, right? So you know which ones the parameters are, because you know what server name is and location is, and you don't have to set it to something local in order to know what it is, right? But it also takes away some of the documentation, because here, if you're in args, see, I've got these guys here. I could document these guys all day long right next to each other, bam, 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 and I could even give rich, detailed explanations for each one of them right beside them, like we do in SQL, right? And that's not really as much of an option here in the params. What you would have to do is come down here and list server name, location, and do that underneath there. So if you want full documentation, then you're going to have to list it out parameter by parameter on each line down there. So you'd have to do that like this, right? And just document it like that, right? If it's going to be small and you don't need it, if it's fairly self-explanatory, then knock yourself out, do this, and don't document it. But you'll find it works the exact same way. I did tell that don't save, didn't I? I guess we'll find out. So I come here. Get my over here. And it works the same way. Okay? So, two ways to pass parameters to script files, and as far as I know, there's no real practical limit that you would run into. I mean, I've never read of a hard-coded limit, but if there is, it's probably into the hundreds or thousands. Probably you'd run out of typing room before you ran out of parameters, right? Wrong one. Okay. So, and you can see I'm working from here today. My printer, I couldn't find a printer to save my life. Okay, I already mentioned that. You can work with it like you do at the command line. So you can do things like changing drives. We'll actually see that later. And one of the things that makes scripts really cool is that you can use them to load things like functions and providers and create aliases, because remember, all of these things are session specific, right? So if you create an alias in your session and you close down your session, that alias goes away. It's only for this session. So you have to keep loading it and keep loading it and keep loading it, right? So you got two choices. You can put it in the profile, right, which most of this is going to be server-side code, right? I mean, most of these scripts are going to be server-side code, and you don't really want to go putting aliases and functions and whatnot in profiles, because remember, 3 months ago, we talked about the profiles and how you've got 4 different levels of profile, right? You don't really want to load it in the profiles because you're probably not going to be the only one writing PowerShell scripts for this server. And somebody else could map an alias to something else. And they're going to fight if it comes in the profile and then they load one in their current session, right? So it's usually a good practice. Notice I didn't say best practice. It's a good practice to load all of your functions and all of your aliases and all of your providers and everything in your session. And scripts are a really good place to do that because you can do something called dot sourcing. And when you dot source your scripts, you actually have access to those variables that you call, and you can use them more like loading libraries in .NET or include files in ASP, right? For those of you that go back to ASP 3.0, I'm dating myself here. So now let's move on to, and I'll give you an example of dot sourcing. We're actually going to finish out this class with some good dot sourced code, so I can show you how that works. But right now we're going to talk about variable scopes in scripts, because this is one of those things that can trip you up if you don't know what you're doing, and there are some tricks. You know, you have to know what the scope of the variable is. By default, the scope of the variable is the script. Okay? So that means if I have a script that calls another script, that child script has access to a variable in the parent script, but it can't change it. What it does is it brings it up in a mirrored version. Which one is that in VB? Is that by value or by reference? I never can keep those straight. I always have to look it up. But whichever one brings up the copy and works with the copy, that's what you're doing here. Does anybody remember which one it is? Because I never remember. I mean, I could do that 40 times a day and I'd have to look it up every single time. So, okay, so by value is the one that makes the copy, right? Okay. You've got the .NET book. Go look it up. So, you just need to be aware that are you still thinking about that? Because it looks like is it by value or by reference? Because it's going to bother me now. So just be aware that it makes a copy first. So what we're going to do here, and I've got child 1. We'll take a look at it real quick. So what I've got here is child 1, and it sets a variable to server 1, and then it just prints it, right, before the call, and then it calls child var change 1, and then it does it after the call. And as it turns out, child var change 1, it changes server to server 2. Okay, so we're going to attempt to change that variable that's coming from the master, that's coming from the parent script, right? Let me do this. Child 1. What did I do wrong? I didn't qualify it. There we go. So let's get some room so we can see here. There we go. Okay, so you see here before the call it was server 1. Inside the child script it was server 2, and then after the call it was server 1 again. So the child script was not able to change the variable in the parent script, right? But then you come here to child 2 and you see here you've got server 1, and you print before server 1. You call change 1, although that should be calling change 2, and then that sets it to global server. So what we're doing here, let me see if I'm getting ahead of myself, is we're setting that master instance with the global flag and telling the scripts that it's a global variable, and then all the child scripts are able to change it now. Okay? So let me make sure that I didn't change 2. Yeah. So what I need to do, because in my haste I have managed to change that somewhere. Let's do that. Hope that works. So if I bring this up and change it to 2, then you can see here that before the call at server 1, inside the child script at server 2, and afterwards it's been changed to server 2 because we made it a global variable. Fair enough? Now, you can keep that if you're afraid that somebody is going to come along and change your script. If you've got like a library that you've written and other people are calling your libraries and you're afraid that somebody's going to do that, you can explicitly create this. Just like you called it global, you could specifically create that as a script variable and prevent somebody from escalating that scope, promoting that scope, right? So let's see, I think we're doing pretty good on time. Now, like I said, dot sourcing can be very, very useful. And what that does is that automatically changes all of the variables in a parent script to global scripts. So now you have full access to all of them. Okay? It's very easy to do, and it can be very, very useful. We'll get back to that because I'm going to use an example with dot sourcing. I'll explain how it works in a minute. And we're going to do that in context. So right now we're going to talk about scripting tables. And last time we talked about... I don't think we actually got around to scripting any SPs out of the database, did we? But what we did was we were loading script files into the database, right? Is where we left that. So now we're going to talk about scripting tables, and it's easy enough. But one of the first questions is, why would you even want to script in PowerShell when you can script it in SMS, or you can script it in that little tool, I forget what it's called, that shipped with 2000 that still works in 2005 if you set it up right and all of that, right? Because the problem is right now is you can't script. The only real way you have to script scripting to script your objects, if you want to do it offline or if you want to do it as part of the process, is through MS Build. Right? I mean, that's really kind of a mess when you're doing stuff straight from SQL or you're wanting an easy way to do something, right? What if you don't even have MS Build installed, right? So this gives you a way to automatically add it to your processes. If you want to script out a table and move it somewhere else as part of a process, as part of a dev process or something like that, right? Maybe you just want to dump the entire database real quick and ship it to a dev server without any data, right? You just want to recreate the structure on another system. Well, that's all well and good. You can do that in the GUI, but what if you've got what we call circular relationships, right? What if you've got 3 or 4 or 9 databases that you need to script, and this table relies on this object being there, this object relies on this one relies on this one relies on that one relies on, and they're all so intermingled, you can't actually script out a single database and restore them in order, because you have to restore part of this database and part of that database and part of that database and part of that database in order for all the circular dependencies to be satisfied in order to get an actual clean run, right? And what if you've got a dev schema that's changing quite often and you want to be able to either revert back to a previous schema, or you want to push that schema to a different dev box, say twice a week, 3 times a week, twice a day, I've even seen, right? You don't want to be out there hand scripting all of that stuff, choosing all of those options by hand in SMS every single time, creating a file, and then running it on the other box. And if you've got circular dependencies, you have to go through all that crap every single time. It's just ridiculous. And one thing, the Visual Studio for DBAs doesn't handle that. I mean, you get just as many errors there as you do scripting it by hand, okay? So that's where PowerShell comes in. You can script all of those dependencies either in a table or by an order by clause in here, or put them in a file in order the way you want them. You can do them many, many different ways. You can order the objects that you want to script, and you can script them in one database and another. I mean, you can switch databases every other line if you need to, right? Build that script and then automatically run it against that other server. And you can pass in parameters to do that. So you can have a script that does this. Script out this database from, or this entire set of databases from this server, and send it to this entire set of databases from that server. And if you have to do that 3 or 4 times a week, it's well worth your time to put that stuff in a file, so that when somebody says, hey, can you transfer this? You go, push the button. and then, and it just works. 5 minutes later, you go, it's done. No muss, no fuss, and everything's done. It's just beautiful. I actually use stuff like that several times a week in my job. I mean, I've done more and more stuff with PowerShell. Yeah, this is my, you're online, so you need to back up your laptop thing. So I do more and more with PowerShell anymore, and I've done, like I showed you guys last week, I get, tons of code when they want me to deploy. I get tons of SQL files in separate folders, and they say, oh, well, we need to deploy this, and I look it up, and it's got 4 dozen files in this one, and 2 dozen files in that one, and 3 files in that one, and I've got 100 different directories there. That one of them has hit that button. Yes, create them in separate files. And SMS, when they created that, and just for some reason they think that's a good idea. For them, that's a good idea because that's the way they save it in source control, right? So they save it. Each SP gets its own version in its own folder in source control, and so it's easy for them to save it like that. So, but for us, it's murder to try to deploy that, because how the hell do you do that? Well, I showed you a script about 10 inches long. I mean, 10 inches long that. That will take care of every single one of those and just install them, boom, just like that. So we're kind of doing the same thing here with table scripting, right? And you can script tables, you can script SPs this way, you can script anything you need to this way, because it doesn't change. The scripting method never changes. That's what's really cool. Nothing ever changes. The only thing that changes is the node of the tree that you're in. Right? You're either in the tables node or in the SP node or in the schemas node or in the logins node, but nothing ever changes. It's still just calling the script method. Fair enough? Okay. So that's why you want to script in PowerShell, because it's just so damn powerful. There's almost nothing you can't do with it. Okay? But don't get me wrong. It's buggy as hell. But it's not PowerShell, it's SMO. Okay? There are some bugs in there that even the Microsoft guys haven't been able to fully reconcile for me yet. So I'll walk you through a couple of them. I've got a couple more examples online. If you guys ever go to Midnight DBA, you can look at my scripting objects in PowerShell. I've got like 2 or 3 videos on it where I discuss those, and I go through a couple of the quirks, things that you can't do, things that you should be able to do, things that as soon as I flip this bit, for some reason the whole script just blows up. I don't know. So, and nobody's ever been able to answer that for me. So anyway, that's scripting. We'll get to that soon enough. Loading assemblies. This is what I really wanted to get to last week. Now, when you load a .NET assembly, because in order to do the really fancy scripting stuff, you have to actually call SMO. Okay? And in order to do that, you have to load the SMO assembly. And the SMO assembly is nothing but a DLL, right? Like all the other assemblies, it's just a DLL. But you have to load it up into memory into your session so that you can create objects. You can create objects with it, and you can use the functionality in there. So it's a lot easier to do in PowerShell than it is in VBScript. A lot easier to do in PowerShell than it is in VBScript. But you still have to know that, again, it's per session. So .NET uses strong names, okay? So when you call an assembly in .NET using a strong name, you have to use the namespace, the version number, the culture, and the public key that they use to sign it. Now, that sounds like an awful lot, but that's really only because it is. If I come down here to assembly, these are all the assemblies that are loaded, right? So if I come down here, you can see all the Microsoft SQL Server ones. All these guys, these are all the assemblies that you can load and use for one task or another, right? So this is the assembly name, this is the version, this is the public token, okay? So in order to call that, we won't need that again. In order to call that, you would do something like this to load a full assembly. You would use the reflection.assembly, and you would load that entire thing separated by commas. So Microsoft SQL Server SMO, version 10.0.0.0.0.0.0, cultural neutral, public key token, there's that nice long number right there. And then what I'm sorry?
How do you get that information?
I just showed it to you in Windows Assembly. Here, we'll go back. Yeah, that's not right. So that's all this stuff right here. You notice how culture here is, if it's blank, then just set it to neutral. It has to be set to something in the line up here. Okay? So, now, so I can load that, and then I can set an object. So I can say object equals new object, and then call scripting options in this case. Okay? And we're going to go ahead and get into this because that's what we're starting to do. So what is that called? Load full assembly, huh? Alrighty, let's hope so. Okay. So here's what happened. It loaded the assembly because it gave me GAC, that yes, it's loaded in the GAC. Gave me the version, gave me the location. If you don't get a call like this, then your load failed. It won't come up and tell you that DLL isn't found, error, whatever. It'll just return. Nice, huh? So, if you don't get this, then your DLL load failed. Now, what I did else in that file was once I set object to this, to scripting options, I went ahead and printed out the object. So that's what you're looking at here, is all of the scripting options that the scripting options object carries in SMO. So you can see here, you'll recognize a lot of these that we use. Batch size, script drops, schema qualify, include headers, include if not exists. A lot of these, or every one of these, are things that you'll find in SMS when you go in to manually script, right? You get that first screen and you get to set your options, right? So these are all the options that you can set. Now, we're looking at them here. So you say script schema, script data. That's one of the things that doesn't work. Just flat out doesn't work. I don't know. Script indexes, script owner, DRI all of that stuff. You can get to all of that stuff directly from PowerShell, and you can just set those options. Okay? So,
The next column said true and false. Obviously, you're setting this stuff to, or have done that already, prior to running them. You'll see in the other column it has like true and false.
right?
Are some of this stuff set?
Yeah, there are defaults. Yeah, there are defaults that get set. There are defaults that come already set. Honestly, I don't know. And for those of y'all that didn't hear, the question was, if I'm stating it right, how do the defaults get set, or are these defaults already set? Off the top of my head, I would have to say that in SMS you can go into options and you can set these defaults under scripting options. So it saves, for SMS anyway, it saves it probably in an XML file, is my guess. And my guess would also be that this pulls that from the same place, but that's merely a guess. That's a good question. I never thought about where these actually get set before. But it would be an easy enough thing to do to go on SMS and change one of those in the defaults and see if it changes here. Actually, I'll probably do that when I get home, because now you got me curious. But yeah, that's good. So clearly these are whether or not, true and false is whether or not this flag is set, right? So in order to set this flag, all you have to do, let's see, well actually I'm going to show you that in a minute, so I'm not going to do it manually here. But there's good news for the load full assembly. You can load a partial assembly, and it's so much nicer. So the only change here is you load with partial name, and all you have to do is load that. You don't have to know all of that other stuff. You can load with partial name. And if it's in the GAC, that's the catch, right? If it's in the GAC, it'll pick it up and it'll know which one you're talking about. Okay? The load full assembly comes in when you've got several versions of the DLL and you want to load a specific one for this specific purpose. Right? Maybe a lesser one, or maybe a lesser version or a higher version has introduced a bug or taken away a functionality, changed a functionality somewhere, and you want this other one instead, right? But as far as I know, there's no limit to the assemblies you can load in here. I mean, you could even load, you know, my guess is you could probably even load like Dundas charting stuff and infragistics grid control stuff. I mean, I don't know any reason why you wouldn't be able to. Anything you can do in .NET, because this is a .NET language. I'm sorry? How do you specify the partial load? Right here in the reflection.assembly, you say load with partial name. Right there. Right there. Because it's already in the GAC, the DLLs that are loaded in that Windows assembly, those are the .NET assemblies that are actually loaded in the GAC, and so it automatically knows, it goes there and it finds that one and it loads that one automatically.
So if you load .NET DLL, you should be able to call any of the methods or any of the functions within the .NET DLL.
Yeah.
When you showed the Microsoft SQL SMO, so all those are objects, or all those are methods are within that SMO object?
I mean all the things here?
Yeah, all those things there.
That I just showed, this whole list of things? Yeah. These are all the...
.NET schema, you know, you can then get that schema out.
Yeah, well, okay. Keep in mind that all of these guys are scripting options, okay? Because, and I'll bring up this one because it's the same thing. Remember, I set SObject here, okay, to an instance, to a specific instance of SMO scripting options. So the only thing here that you're going to get are scripting options, because I created the object as an SMO scripting objects object. Okay? If I want to, here, let me show you something. Let me show you something here. Maybe this will answer your question. Where I'm going with next will answer your question. Because it's important, I think, for, that's my bunny. It's important for you guys to know how to look this stuff up. This screen gets big and I can't find anything. Here it is. So let's go into BOL and I'll show you guys how to look this stuff up and how to read the help on this, because it's important for you guys to see that. Come on, center. There we go. So if I come here and if I just search on SMO, right? Okay, I get the SMO namespace. Good. It explains the SMO namespace to me. But look, I also get all these classes. Okay? And what does it say here? You're loading a DLL, which is an assembly. So you have to load the assembly itself. Okay? So if I'm in here, let's go down and find scripting options. But these are all of the classes that you can call. It's down here somewhere. Getting close. Scripter, scripting options, right there. That's the class we just called. Okay? So if I click on that, then I can see not only how to use it, but if I come down here and see the members, it's a little thick. But you see all these guys look familiar, right? Because these are all the public properties that you're able to change. Right? So let me go back a little bit. Let me go up. And you'll recognize these portions of the name, right? I got the namespace right here, but I've also got the assembly. Remember, it's the assembly I want to call. So if you're looking up one that you've never seen before, it's the assembly I want to call, the Microsoft SQL Server.SMO. Where is it? Right here, Microsoft SQL Server SMO. Right? So you want to load the assembly, but you want to set an object equal to an object in the namespace. So Microsoft SQL Server management SMO, and this is Microsoft SQL Server management SMO, and since it's the scripting options, then you just say .scripting options because it's under the management SMO namespace. Does everybody get that? Okay, good. So that's how you look that up in BOL, and oh man, feel free to explore this because look how many of these guys there are, right? I mean, it's just ludicrous the number of things you can do in this. So, and they're all called the same way. It never changes. So you can just call one of them and start poking around and see what you can do with it.
I guess what you're trying to say.
Okay.
Suppose you load a .NET that says adds two numbers. Okay. With PowerShell, the way you've shown it, you theoretically load that DLL. But how do I call a class method saying I pass it two numbers and get that result? Can I do it with this scripting methodology?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, exactly how that's done depends on the DLL, right? But yeah, there's absolutely. Once you load that DLL, you've got access to its full functionality. If we have time in this class, which we've only got 2 classes left, so we may not have time, but I can show you how you can even write regular WinForm applications in PowerShell. And you can bring up you can create actual GUIs in PowerShell so that when you start a PowerShell script, it'll launch a WinForm GUI, and you can work with it just like if it were a compiled app. There's absolutely no reason why you can't do that. So, okay, we've got a few minutes left, which I think may put us right about on time. And hopefully this stuff will become a little more clear as we do our table examples, which we are at. Good. Let me close this. So, we're going to script tables today. And you notice how before I said we were going to, I was going to teach you guys how to dot source. So let's go ahead and learn how to dot source first, right? I've got my library object, and it's only got one thing in it. It's lib, and that is my DLL load, right? My assembly load, and I set the object to the scripting object because I'm going to actually be changing the scripting options here, okay? So in there, maybe I want that to be called, I want that to be able to be called from everywhere, and I don't want to have to rewrite it every single time. Or if I make a change, maybe if I want to load a specific one or something, right, globally, then I can make that change globally, and every script next time it runs will pick up that change. So I do what's called dot sourcing. And what that means is right here, I put a dot and a space before the normal script call, and that automatically tells it that I want to have access to all of the variables inside. And that even works from the command line too. I don't have an example. I meant to put one together, but I don't have one. That if I were to call a script from the command line here, and I dot sourced it and I ran that script, then even here from the command line, I would be able to type in the variable name and get that variable's information and look at that variable's information, even though the script has stopped running and even though it's in a completely different context. So it's even completely interactive in that sense. Okay? So here I've pulled out some of the scripting options that we're going to change, and this is how you change them. Once you've got that loaded, and you've got the object set to the scripting objects, right? That's in the library file, right? Now all you got to do is set SObject.script batch terminator to true, and enforce scripting options to true, and no file group equal to true, and so on and so on and so on, right? Once you start setting all of those options, then you just have to pass that into your script object. So let's look at some of this. Let's see which one I have current right now. This is the one I have current right now, and that's not the one I want. I'm going to put that in another file real quick. I'll bring that back in a minute. Okay. So, we're going to script something. We're going to do that. Now you notice how I get my child objects, my child items, I pipe that to a for each. I've got my curly brackets for my for each. $_ is my current iteration. I call the script method, And in order to get it to pick up those objects, the scripting options, I pass it the scripting options variable right here that I've already created as the scripting options variable that I loaded from SMO. Is that fairly clear? Now, it's really important here that you put, and I'm going to put this to a file because, well, you know, scripting something to the screen rarely does much good, right? So I'm going to script this to a file, but you really have to be careful where you put the out file, because right now I've got it inside of the for each. You see I've got one bracket here, one bracket there, so I'm piping each individual object to the out file in the for each. So let me come here, table scripts, right? And also, oh sorry, I also want to point out, notice here that I just did a CD to the proper database tree, right? Just like I would have if I were working at it at the command line. I don't have to do anything funny to it. I can just CD to it and it'll be just fine. So I'm already here, so I can say .whack. So 1. And I'm going ahead and printing out these guys so we can see that they've been changed. Now we're waiting for the script to happen. There it goes, there's the script. There's 100 tables in here, and I've only got one script. Why is that? I'm sorry? It's inside the for loop, and I didn't append. Right? Every single time, see, it's in the for loop, and every single time I call it, I overwrite it. So I'm creating and destroying that file again and again and again and again and again, right? So if I want to do that, I have to call the append. Now look at this. See how I'm in tables? If I were to call that script again, it's going to fail because it's not in the database tree. See, I'm in the database tree, and that's a relative path. So what I have to do, that's why I did this beforehand. I set the class path. Well, actually, I should probably CD to a class path, shouldn't I? There we go. So now I can put myself back in there. There we go. I can call it again. There, so we can check our options. Oh, that was fast. And now you see, I've got all my scripts, right? Now, there's another way to do this. I'll go ahead and kill that. You can put it outside of the entire script. Actually, outside the loop, but I didn't put it outside the loop there, did I? There's some of that wing in it that makes me famous. So I can put it outside. Let's see, script object outside file. Okay, yeah, that should work. So I'm going to go ahead and kill this. Why not? And again, I'm in the database, so stop that. I need to CD to the class path and go there. I've got two. Just do it. Oh, it was still pending on that one, wasn't it? Do that. Do that. See if we can watch that script pop up. There it is. And now we've got all of our things again because it was outside the loop, right? So what that does, the difference is when you put it inside the loop, clearly, it's going to open and close that file a lot of times, right? Actually, I need that open, don't I? So when I put it inside the loop here, it's going to open, close, open, close, open, close, open, close. For every single table, it's going to open and close, and it's going to append it. When you put it outside the loop, it's going to script out that entire thing, and it's just going to dump it to the file. There are pluses and minuses to each one, right? We're about to talk about one. Now, scripting drops. Scripting drops is different. It is interesting because SMS clearly hides a lot of stuff from you because it calls SMO, and this is how SMO works. So it's got to be doing a lot of what we're doing in here to kind of flip-flop things. Because if I set script drops to true, we'll see what happens here. Did I kill that file? I'll go ahead and kill it just in case. So if I set that to true, to cd to class path, and run that. I get that drop table. Well, this was clearly inside the path, wasn't it? Clearly inside the loop. There we go. So we'll do that one again. Okay. That's better. And where are my drops? I did set the drop, didn't I? Script drops equals true. Object, passing with the object. Well, fine. Oh, that's the problem. That's what happened. When you script drops, let me see if I can get it to do what it's supposed to do now. Oh, look at that. I didn't comment out that line. That's the problem. So down here at the bottom I have my drops because I didn't comment out that other line last time. Next time we'll do it right. So this is what would have ordinarily been in that if I had that line commented out. When you script the drops, for some reason it doesn't script the tables as well. And I don't understand why, but if you have the script drops turned on, that's all you get in the file, no matter what else you've got turned on in there. And I'm not sure why. So in order to script the drops and script the tables, I have to first script the drops, then I have to set the drops to false and then script the table. So I actually have to do double the work. And what you're going to get here oops, let me set that again. Now I should get exactly what I'm looking for. There we go. And what you're going to get here is not what I'm looking for again. Oh, I bet I did the same thing I did last time. That's all set to append. That's set to append. CI, script the thing, script the thing. Script append, that's all set to append. Let me see here. I just love that class path. Okay, so I got my drops, and then I've got all of my table creates. But you notice how in SMS when you do it, it does drop, create, drop, create, drop, create, drop, create, drop, create, interlaces them. So this is the way SMO does it naturally. So it's clearly fudging something behind the scenes back there and making different calls, right? So we can duplicate that. We can duplicate that very easily with, let me open this up. And let me turn both of these back off. Oops. And now I'm going to interlace them, and I need to put that code back in there that I had before. Okay. So this is the code I had in there before. It's the same GCL, and we're going to interlace these guys. We're combining both of these guys into a single loop so that I can get drop create, drop create, drop create, drop create the way I actually want it. Now you notice my little backtick here? You have to have that if you want to format well. That's the break character. Remember the escape character we were talking about, but by itself it's also a new line character, the continuation character. Same thing as the underscore at the end of a line in VB. If you if you don't have that, then you can't have your first command inside the loop on a different line. So I just like to do that for formatting reasons. It took me forever to figure that out. So what we're doing here is we're getting this. We're getting our objects. We're taking for each one of these. I'm going to set scripting drops equals to true. Then I'm going to script it with the append. Now I've got a go statement here that I'm also appending to the file, because you notice here we've got script batch terminator set to true. I don't know if I still have a script file or not. I do. But you notice how it has yet to script a batch terminator. Okay, so we don't have a go statement in there. So that's one of the drawbacks that I was talking about earlier. When I was talking about up here to scripting out the entire thing and then dumping it in the file all at once, is now you can't do that. You can't do stuff like this because you're not doing it on a row-by-row basis. So if you want to print go statements, and this goes for anything in SMO you script, whether it be tables, functions, SPs, whatever, and you want go statements in between, and any of us know the SPs, you have to have the go statements in between, then you have to do it like this, and you have to make a separate call to go, pipe it to the same out file, and append, and it'll put go statements after each one of them, and you'll be good to go. Okay? So I'm setting it to true, then I'm scripting the drop statement, then I'm setting it to false, and then I'm scripting the table. And I'm putting goes between each one of them. You notice that's for each child object, so it's going to do that for every single table that it comes across in the database. So if I come here and get rid of my file, because remember we're appending, so I go down, get my class path, here, my script again. With any luck, this will all work exactly like it's supposed to. There we go. And now we've got dropped, go, create, go, drop, go, create, go, and so on, right? If you're scripting SPs, you've got these nice little ANSI nulls on, quoted identifiers on. Well, each one of those need go statements as well, because with an SP that'll fail. It might fail with a table, I'm not sure. I showed you in the last class how to go through and strip those out of there, because you really don't need them, right? I mean, the default connection stuff will take care of that stuff for you. So you don't need to be setting those things again and again and again. But you will get errors if you go to script SPs and you keep those in there. So last time I gave you a script that goes through there and just strips those things out of the file. So you can make that the next step in here. After you do all of this, you could make a next step to go in there and strip all those things out of the file, and you'll be good to go. And now you've got, and now if you want to make another script, say you're scripting all the tables, right, to be shipped to another database, you can do this. Then you can clean the code, you can strip it, whatever you want, and then you can make another connection, like right up here. Then you can just CD to a different database, just change the server name right here. And then you can load all the files with the script I gave you last week, which is just about this long. And now you've got a process that's really just a few lines long. It's really not bad at all. And most of that is white space for readability and all that, right? That you can use, that every time they want you to change table, update tables to another server or whatnot, you can just do it. And if you want to delete them first, or if you want to save the previous version off first and script out the original tables first so you can put them back, you've got all this stuff, and it's very rich, and it's really not that hard to do. It's really a lot less code than you would actually use in SMO, calling it from VB, right? Which is just absolutely horrendous. I never really got the hang of SMO and VB. It was just too much creating of objects, like WMI. It's just it's too much, right? I never really started using WMI like all the time, every single day. Until Powershell came along, because it was just too much stuff. I'm a DBA. I'm not a coder. I'm too stupid for all that. So I can't do stuff like that. So yeah, go ahead and save the changes. And that's how you script objects in SMO. I will finish with the bunny, and I am done. Anybody have any questions? Yeah. So let me get this straight. Peter is so short, he's able to roll with the punches and recover fast.
That's weak, man.
That's pretty weak.
Roast me.
We're talking SQL Server 2008 internals. That's the best you got for internals. So those of you who came in late, I've got 3 books to give away. Okay? SQL Server Caught My Internals, Caught My Query Performance Tuning Distilled. An excellent, excellent book. I haven't read this one, but it's the same author that did the 2005 version. Well, Grant and Sajal, who was just an excellent. He did the first one by himself, and it was phenomenal. And I've got the Caught My Implementation and Maintenance training kit.
Oh, Kaylin's book.
Yeah, Kaylin's book. And the trips are in there.
They are?
Yeah.
The trips. I love that.
So, what y'all got? This is the end of class. It's your last chance.
I wrote on this too.
I'm sorry?
I only use 4 bits. What? 4 bytes?
I like that one. Geek humor. I like that.
Byte.
Peter's so short he has to stretch to tie shoes.
Ah, that's not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad.
That's not bad.
Okay, stay out of the 70s, guys. None of this. He's so short he can play Tarzan off my shoelace. None of that. Was that yours?
He's so short you can see his shoes on his driver's license photo.
Oh, I like that one.
Wait, let me check.
Okay, 1, 2, definitely.
He's so short he can walk under the snake.
Under the what?
Under the snake?
Oh.
Oh, he can walk under a snake.
Boo.
Yeah. Nice try, nice try.
Come on.
Peter's so short he extended his fit Feb just to look taller.
What was that?
I what?
You extended fit February.
Just to look taller.
April just to look taller.
Oh, I see.
I'm so short, Twitter loves me.
Twitter loves you. Oh, I get it. Oh, more geek humor. That's
Witty, but not good.
That's not bad. That's
Not
okay.
good enough, though.
Anybody else?
So short the government's going to give him a bailout?
Topical. I like it.
I don't mean to sound dumb, but that's my very first time here.
Uh
I
huh.
have no idea what's going on.
We're giving away books
He's gonna-
at Peter's expense.
At my expense. Oh, no, this is...
The comments here, like, what's the response to what?
To me.
Oh, yeah. If you want a book, you have to come up with the best. I'm so short that...
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So,
We're complimenting him.
yeah.
I see.
No, that was the first
You have
class.
to give me kudos for skinny, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
29 pounds so far since February 1st.
He's like half a toothpick.
So,
You know, with a constant in the universe, some of us are gaining it.
Okay, I've already given 2 away. You
The
guys remember who
expanded
you are,
universe
and I'll
today?
give one to bail out because that's just topical. Okay, guys, good class, and it's Trevor's turn.
Actually, food.
Food. It's food's turn.
go eat.